What's up, Liron here, and yes, you read the title correctly. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to paint a white or yellowish wall, okay? This is something a lot of people struggle with. How do I get the wall looks white, and it doesn't look good when it's white, or the wall looks yellow. It doesn't look good when it's actually yellow, when I paint it yellow. So a couple of things. First, I'm going to show you the reference photo. We're going to dive deep into analyzing it, talking about a few important things to pay attention to. Okay, things aren't always as they seem. I will say this, the magic is in the nuances. So nothing is really pure yellow or pure blue or pure red. It's a bit of the dominance of the yellow, but then it's neutralized by the reds and the blues, okay? So the magic is in these nuances. When you get them right, you get the right color and temperature and value for a building's wall in this example, okay? So let's take it to the computer, actually. I'm going to show you the reference photo and some things to pay attention to, and then we'll paint it. So I got the painting opened in Photoshop, and let me just show you, okay? So you look at this building, you see the blue and the yellow, and they seem to be very, very strong. So I'm going to use the, what do you call it, eyedropper tool, yeah, or sample tool, I guess in other softwares. So here's the blue. That's pretty much the blue of the sky. Now let's look at it, and you see it's not really this blue. And what a lot of people do is the mistake of painting it this blue and then wondering why it doesn't work. Sorry, that's the wrong color. Why it doesn't look right. And then they see this yellow. They say, oh, it's a yellow. So here we go. I'm going to go with kind of a yellow. And it's just super exaggerated. It looks a little amateurish. So what you want to do is really pay attention to the nuances of the color. So if I sample this yellow here, you see, that's what it's composed of. That's a very mellow kind of peach, orange, neutralized. It's not an orange. It's very neutralized. Okay, and that's the kind of yellow that makes up the building. I actually noticed this nice little balcony here. I like that. So this is, you know, it looks a bit red or orange, when in fact it's brown. That's what these tend to look like, okay? Now this tree here, a lot of people, I know it may seem silly if you're not the one doing it, but a lot of people will go for green, but this isn't green. I mean, look at that. It's almost black. And if we're talking about color, it's not even on the green side of things, it's on the yellow side of things. So the color that Photoshop sampled is actually not green at all. So let's try another one. Maybe we'll get a greener one here. See, okay, so that's more of a green. You see, the Photoshop was able to pick up on the nuances here, and it is indeed in the green-yellow range. But sometimes it will be more even in the yellow range. This is gray, some areas over here. Some of them are brown, you see? So it's very misleading. Now, you look at this entire shape right here, and you may think to yourself, oh, okay, so this is black. Well, it's not black. It's look at these colors. It's pretty light if you want to compare that to a black. So let me show you here. See the difference? So there are a couple of black or dark lines here, but they're just a small part of it. We even have the blue of the sky reflecting through here a little darker, and it could be easily misread as almost as light as the sky, but notice the difference, okay? So all of these nuances, that's where the magic lies. If you want to turn this into something that looks yellow or looks like a white wall, the magic is in the nuances, okay? And that's it. With that being said, we can start working on the painting. I hope that makes sense. You really want to try and do this kind of detective work on especially on scenes that give you a hard time when you look at them. You can't figure out what you're looking at. If it's easy, then go for it. I usually don't do that. But if it's a hard one, do that kind of a thing. It can really help. Now let's paint it. So now that we're more familiar with the reference photo and we know that what looks to be yellow isn't really yellow, it's more of a neutralized color, but it's also not gray. It's definitely not white. Let me show you one way of doing this. Again, you can do like the sky in dark and have the building in white. And that way it'll create a nice contrast. I think this is incredibly boring. That's my problem with it. And you know I love warmth. So I love to exaggerate that kind of a thing. So we will go with an initial wash that's yellow. I will do my best to not go overboard here. Now, to just keep it kind of a neutralized yellow, and then I'll show you, okay, that's a way of painting a wall. The problem is we know what a color is, and that clouds our judgment, because what the color looks like in perfect lab conditions is never what it actually looks like in the reference photo. The reference is, the subject is highly influenced by the environment, the different lights coming from different angles, different reflective surfaces. It's so complex and nuanced that you can just, you know, guess, okay, it's white, it's a white wall, or it's a pure yellow wall. That's just never reality. But in any case, let's get started. I'm going to start by setting up a couple of perspective lines. So what happens is we get a fan that goes like this. So the top part, if you look at the very top of the building, this is the angle of the edge. Then the more we go lower, the more the fan kind of opens up, okay? So something like this. And then we also look into the distance, so the third, the third vanishing point also plays a role here. I got confused because the paper for some reason is very light. I hope you will be able to see everything. But in any case, you get these lines that also work in a bit of a diagonal manner, so it kind of works like this, okay? Very generally speaking. So you get a fan that goes like that, too. Okay, now I'm gonna eyeball it mostly. These are just guidelines to help me. So the top part is somewhere around here, like that, and you can always make corrections, so don't worry if it's not perfect right off the bat. Basically, we have a wall that goes like this, a wall that goes like this, goes down like that, and goes down here and meets the edge of paper. Okay, this is the highest possible simplification for this scene. Then we have this section here with the windows. Here we have an abundance of details actually. So we have this the tall tower splits up. I'm not gonna get all the details in because I don't feel like it. Really, I don't feel like doing this too highly detailed. I will try and get the gist of it. Okay, so it will be a proper impression. Now, another thing you want to watch out for, and this is a good opportunity to talk about it, is don't go too dark with the shadows. If you look at the shadows, once again, they have quite a lot of depth in them. Shadows aren't black, they aren't fully, because the problem with completely pitch black shadows is you can't see anything in them. And then you lose some of the opportunity to express their reference. Okay, that's the only problem, really. I have nothing against the color black. If you paint monochromatically or a duochrome painting, it's beautiful. It can look great, but the problem is in shadows, very often we lose the ability to show the nuances of the shadow because we go with pitch black shadows. So these are the main lines. I'm going to put in just a couple of indications for windows. Okay, trying to figure out how I stick to the perspective and don't destroy it. It can be a challenge, especially in these kind of a weird third vanishing point that's up there perspectives, which by the way, I never talked about a third vanishing point in my videos too, so sorry about that. There are plenty of good videos on the topic though, so yeah. And I do want to establish a couple of windows here. My perspective is again not perfect, but I hope it's passable. I hope it will still look good. Okay, so here we go, just a couple of these. Maybe this line should be a little like this and not like that. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. I don't want to exaggerate these things too. So here we go, just a couple of windows. These will help me orient myself when I paint this. Okay, it's all for that matter. We have this, let's get rid of this, that's a guideline. We have this lovely arch here. Now, if it's hard for you to get that curve in, get the left side, get the right side, and then kind of eyeball the curve. Okay, it's not gonna be perfect, but it's gonna be nice looking at the very least. And then we have this kind of ornament above it. And with that, as you know, I don't need much. I'm ready to paint this. Let me show you how I paint yellow or white walls. So off we go, and I'm gonna use a rather large brush for this. Now here's the thing with these scenes, it's always hard for me to decide if I want to kind of do a gradual wash and let it all mix, or I do want to preserve the separation between the light and dark. Let's go for a mix here. I'm holding the paper so that it doesn't have an angle because I don't want the paint to mix too much, and what I'm essentially going to do is a combination of a dull French ultramarine and a dull yellow. Okay, you don't want to go too vibrant, especially with the yellows, because they're not yellow. You have to remember, it's not a perfect yellow wall. It's highly influenced by the different environmental characteristics of how the light and shadow work, what reflective possibly surfaces are around the object you paint, and all of those good things. So here we go, rather loose. I'm gonna let these two mix, okay? So I'm coming back with pure yellow ochre, just putting it here. I'm starting from the center because I wanted to move into the outside rather than pull back all the blue into what I already have, okay? So I'm starting from the center. Now let's dumb it down. I don't want it to be a perfect yellow, so here we go. We're graying it out, okay? But it's still warm. And the magic is in these nuances, okay? That's what you have to understand. The magic is the viewer can read and see, read the shapes and see this is warm. This is a warmer color. The one thing I may need to improve here is to keep the building a little lighter. So let's just dump a bit of water into it at an angle. You see how it lightens it up. It also makes it feel maybe a little older and a little weathered. And I would do wet and darken the sky, but my instincts tell me don't. Don't do that. It's gonna mess the whole thing up. Now here, as it gets closer to us, funny enough, I can start going with a bit more warmth. So let's add a bit of red to the mix. Still quite neutral, but as we get really down to the bottom, red is fine, it's more acceptable. And that will help keep the focus on the yellow in the middle, okay? Because it's a little darker here, it'll make the top part a little lighter. Now here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna dry it off with a hair dryer, because the more this stays wet, different areas are gonna dry with different varying wetness levels, and I don't want that, okay? So let me do that and come back. So now everything is dry, and if there's one thing I regret that I kind of forgot is to leave white areas for windows, because if you can see in the reference photo, some windows are extremely light. I didn't notice that. That's my bad, but we're gonna solve it later on. So now we're done with the stage of how to paint a white wall. That's how you do it. You just paint it using the temperature that you see. If it's a little warmer, you go a little warmer, but don't go overboard unless that's the effect you're going for. I sometimes go overboard, but if you want to be accurate and true to the reference, you sometimes need to pay attention to the very nuanced colors. You have a nuanced yellow here. It's not a pure screaming yellow like this point here. It's rather a more muted one. So now we get to the next stage. This is basically the video's goal has been achieved. Now it's all about the shadows. And what's the main principle that guides me when I put in the shadows? It's fluidity. I want to make sure that I make the impression simple for the viewer to understand. And so I strive to merge as many areas as I can. That's the one thing that really, I think, leads me when it comes to shadows. So that's what we're going to pay attention to. And again, hopefully in the future free course I'm going to do, I don't know, depending on when I publish this video, you may have seen the other video on the topic or not. I will discuss a lot more about how to simplify, because what I'm doing right now is simplifying. I'm looking at the different shapes of light and shadow and painting them as I see them, okay? While maintaining an even flow of paint. Okay, I want to make sure that if there's a shadow I can merge, I merge it right into the other shadow next to it. Okay, so here we go, just a bunch of shadows. This is one shape, it's not big, so as long as you stay on that, you have quite a lot of time to work and rework it. So let's say I want to darken the right section like I see in the reference photo or the top, I just go wet and darken them. The more I can get done wet and wet, the better, because this means that I'm gonna have a nice even flow. It's gonna look good, and it's gonna have that beautiful watercolory characteristic. Okay, you can go with some warmer shadows, some cooler shadows. I find they work beautifully well, especially cooler shadows here. Now that we've established some warm temperature for the actual building walls, with all this beautiful muted yellow, the cooler shadows are really gonna pop here. So here we have this nice shape to paint around this thing here, and then I can actually connect it right into the shadows on the right of this kind of an element, and have the cast shadow of that here on the right. Finish off somewhere around here. So you see how the shape starts to get established. Notice this beautiful nuance. There's a shadow on the right here, but then there's this, you know, the edge of the balcony, and then there's the shadow between the balconies, kind of, I don't know what you'd call these steps. And then you get this beautiful thin line here that makes this thin highlight pop, and you get this connected to that, and just a whole bunch of connections that conform all to the perspective. So you have to pay attention to that. It all goes with the direction of perspective, and I kind of messed it up here, but that's fine. There's a shadow here. Messed it up again with the perspective. There's a shadow here. Usually under the start of the building, you'll have small shadows because of the nature of the architecture. You see all of these smaller shadows, and including these small details also can really help in making the scene a little more interesting. I would even connect some windows to this edge, even though they're not really there. I don't know, it just looks good in my opinion. We're gonna get this in. Let's get a couple of random windows, if you will, here. This goes like that. You can, again, do wet and wet. Get this to be a little darker if it makes sense. Like the inside part, light comes from the left, so the left side of the windows that are beveled into the wall is gonna be darker. This is gonna be a little darker perhaps. This is gonna be a little darker. You just play around with it and find the way you enjoy doing it, pretty much. What else? We have the left side here. There's this interesting ledge here too, and that goes there into the different rounded side of the building. It's not really rounded, it's angular, but you hopefully get my point. There isn't a line here, so I was tempted to pull, not at the edge at least. There's a very gentle shadow here, but not at the edge. And actually this is too strong, so I'm just gonna pick some of it back up. Then we mostly have the vertical shadows for the different balconies and elements of architecture. I want to lighten it up. This is a little too dark, like so. Tons of balconies, and I'm just having fun because these kind of paintings you can just wing the details and it will still look good. See these arches? I don't even know if I want to put them in, so I'm just going to put in a couple of, I don't know, vertical elements and hope they work out. This kind of a thing here. You see, you have a lot of freedom within these kinds of structures. You don't need to follow everything you see to the T. I'm just going to enjoy this one, The demo's purpose has been achieved, and now we can just kind of go wild. And it's important to do these things from time to time just to, I don't know, get the creative juices flowing. And also I find that when you work plein air, it can be beneficial to allow yourself even more of that freedom and that speed, because that really helps to improve the results you get, okay? Especially that speed, really allowing yourself to go fast when necessary. Not going fast just for the sake of going fast, but if it's necessary to get the impression fast, then that can really help. Here's a couple of windows to indicate that this is still the building, because you really blurred the line here. There we go. Very, very simplistic designs, I know. Let's get these windows indicated just by the top and left shadow, see? And that gives it a feeling like it's beveled into the wall. All of these small tricks can really help out. Now here I'm going to switch to a bit of a drier brush format. I don't want anything too striking to be at the lower section of the building. In a different day I would probably, I don't know, include a darker, bigger shadow up down at the bottom, but I don't know, I don't see the need to this time. Let's get some of these windows in here. Some of these windows in here. I think I'm gonna wrap it up soon. I like this. I like the feeling of it. It may feel a bit empty, but I actually like that. Sometimes it's nice to leave even more for the viewer's mind, you know what I mean? You could go another layer and darken the sky, making the walls shine a bit more. I honestly think I'll skip that because I love that blended edge. I don't know, it looks really, really good. So I'm not gonna meddle with it. Let's do something different here. Let's have fun, I wanna have fun too. Let's just put in the tree on the left, kind of exaggerate it. Now the tree it's not green. You know that leaves are green, but it's not green. It's almost black because it's close to us. So I'm gonna get a very dark mixture here that is kind of a muted green, okay? It's not a perfect green, really. This is green, then I add a bit of red to it, and it's muted green. I'm gonna get rid of some of the paint on the brush and then just get some of these leaves in here, dry brush. I want to neutralize it even more actually, so let's do that. Here we go, just a couple of leaves to show that there's a tree here. And hopefully that works out. And it's just a very simple, quick one. This is very much what I would get if I paint outside. And you can go and put in all of these small windows, but I don't see a reason to really. You can indicate shadows on the top and left sides of the windows, because that's where the light comes from, top left, and they're dented into the wall. If an object protrudes, it's going to be the other way around. You can start adding in small, even more architectural details that I barely put in here really. There's, for example, this kind of a line here. There's a lot going on, but the key here is to really just have fun, get the temperature of the different elements, the walls and all of that to look good. And I don't know, I guess just have fun. Look, you see, I'm having fun. I don't care at all. This is the point you have to get to. Sometimes I just decide to go crazy. This is one of them. So it may objectively be not the best result, but I enjoyed this one tremendously. Okay, and this painting could have gone many different ways. I could have taken it slower, build it up slowly, but that's not the kind of thing I want with this. I want to show you the temperature and then just let the viewer kind of figure out what's going on here. So I hope you enjoyed this demo, and maybe just seeing me do this freely opens up something with you that helps you to do it freely as well. This line should be a little more like that to conform better to the perspective. Now, one more thing you want to allow yourself is to change your mind, which I have. I actually am going to darken the sky after looking at it again, and it could be a nice experiment. So I'm like, if we ruin it, we ruin it. I don't really care. But we have the opportunity to maybe learn something new and see how the contrast improves this. So let's do that. Let's darken the sky a bit, not too much, but I do want to try. It looks like a fun thing to do, to define, or to better define the walls of the building. You see, and maybe it will pay off. So let's do that. Very simply, just a bit of paint here that I mixed on the side, a bit of phthalo and a bit of French ultramarine to keep things interesting. And this is a good opportunity to do some negative painting and add shapes that we didn't put in previously. So for example, you could add a highlight here. See that maybe there's a statue on the building, or maybe here on the edge of the building, you add a bit of a, see? You can build the shape of the building using these elements here. So hopefully that makes sense. You see, now it just made the building pop a bit. Should we have done it? Should we have not? It doesn't really matter. It's just a fun little experiment to do. Increase the contrast, see what it looks like. Okay, now let's really wrap it up. So this is it for this one. I hope seeing the full process helps you to figure out how to do this. Now, I know I went a little crazy, a little overboard here, just doing whatever I want. Sometimes I want that freedom and fun. And maybe had I painted this again, I'd cut off the bottom part, because I just don't think it plays that important of a role. It's just empty with tons of windows that I don't really care much about. So I maybe would just cut the painting here. But in any case, I hope that makes sense. Again, the magic is in the nuances, the devil's in the details. If you look at a real scene, and even if the yellow looks like it's popping and it's really, really strong, try and open this photo in Photoshop or other image editing software and focus on the color. Try and, use that, what do you call it, the tool that helps you do that. And just, you'll be amazed to see that this pure yellow isn't that pure. The pure red is actually a brown. You'll see so many funny things, so many optical illusions going on, and it's our job to go beyond them. Now, if you want to exaggerate the colors, go for it. I do that all the time. It's a part of my style. But don't put in a pure yellow and then wonder why it doesn't look like the reference or the subject, you see? So it's all about awareness. You have to learn, okay, if you want to break the rules, break them, and that's perfect. You get a pure yellow, you get a strong yellow. I do that again, all the time. What I want you to do is, if you want to perfectly or more accurately match the color, you'll be able to, because you understand it. Okay, I hope that makes sense, and with that, let's wrap it up. Thank you so much for watching. I just want to remind you, my frustration-free watercolor course. If you're struggling with watercolor painting, be sure to check it out in the description box below. It really solves that problem for people, and I get a lot of really, really kind emails, so thank you so much. And that's it. Let's wrap it up. Thank you so much. We'll see you again real soon.